in the last 10 years, 100,000 Americans came to live in the West Bank. But I was like, why Americans come to live in the West Bank as settlers?
Really? Oh, wow.
Yes, 100,000.
American Jewish settlers in the
Yes,
West Bank.
Jewish. Yes, yes. They in the last 15, 10 years.
Now, let's maybe talk about what this will bring for the future, because this is a cataclysmic event, and it is almost sick to me to read in the New York Times these very empathetic articles about how traumatic the 7th of October was for Israel, and the 7th of October keeps coming up again and again and again because, as we said in the first part, we are setting the agenda, right? We start the world, we start the clock, and thereby we are now justifying everything that's happening or that's being justified from the West. I never thought that we in the West would justify a genocide again, but we're doing it again. We're doing it right now. On the other hand, as you said, Hamas has reached something completely different, probably from what it was aiming for, and has probably, we don't know where this is going. So where do you think this will take Gaza, Palestine, and also like Hamas? I mean, can Hamas be rooted out the way that Israel is trying to? Is that even a realistic goal? And will Hamas still have support in the Palestinian society from now on?
Well, okay. One, you have two questions here in one question. One, is Hamas going to end? And the answer, simple answer, no. And for several reasons. One is Hamas is rooted in the Palestinian society. And the Palestinian society is not only Gaza Strip. You have the West Bank, you have in diaspora, you have in Lebanon, you have in Jordan, you have even Egypt, you have in Libya, you have in Europe, you have everywhere. So uprooting Hamas is just like saying, I want to walk to the moon. It's not going to happen. And for several, why? Because Hamas is a social movement in one way. It has an ideology. Hamas is a service provider, not only in Gaza, but also West Bank and also in diaspora. Hamas is also have allies, regional allies. You have the Houthi, you have Hezbollah, you have the Islamic Jihad, you have the Islamic resistance of Iraq, you have also Iran, and this could go beyond that. Also, has Hamas in Gaza have created a network of people or a network of members that's based on tribalism and in mosques and so on. So it's very hard. You cannot uproot something that's deeply embedded within the society. And because here now the grievances in the Gaza Strip saying that 70% now of the people of Gaza either lost or injured somebody. And they are almost 100% of them have been directly or indirectly affected, 100%. So the level of grievances is so high that eliminating Hamas will be impossible, because the alternative for Hamas will be Hamas 2.0. And this will be more brutal, because you will have to deal with it from the start again, to taming them and to have to find where to talk to them, what their ideology, how. And my fear here, if Hamas is eliminated and then we created a new group came and it became, and this group is still in its first phases and not youthful and not actually tamed, then the conflict will go beyond Gaza and be in the West Bank. This could be, again, we would witness other places engaged in this in this brutal conflict. But I'm so here is uprooting Hamas is something like very difficult. whatever the Israeli says to their people, the Israeli leaders to their people, or to the international community, we are able to eliminate Hamas. We have examples here. We have Taliban. Europe and the Western world have given how many billions, and they have lost thousands of soldiers. And then and it was like, and I remember that's when George W. Bush stood there and spoke like, I announced the end of Taliban after exactly, and after 2 weeks, dozens of his soldiers were killed, the American soldiers. It's exactly the same. I compared to last week message from the Israeli military said, we have taken over Beit Hanun. The next day, 10 soldiers were killed in Beit Hanun. So we are dealing with also a military wing that's in techniques that Israeli army didn't, or even any army in the world didn't experience. In Gaza is not Taliban, it's not mountains, it's mostly rebels now, and you cannot handle this. So the more the Israeli army goes in, the more it will be affected. And in my opinion, the Israeli leadership now, they are looking for any solution, any exit at this moment.
To go out?
Any exit. They are looking for any exit, because to go into Gaza is not easy. And to leave Gaza is even more difficult. And that's the strategy of Israel. You know, Ishaq Rabin in 1991, he said in front of the Knesset that his only dream in life is to see Gaza taken by the sea. That was in 1990 or 91. That was his only dream. And for Netanyahu and others, Gaza is something like unbearable. Nobody can handle the Gaza Strip, because you are not able to handle 80% refugees. You cannot handle, because Gaza have been also, people don't, it's the center of the Palestinian struggle since 40s. So all Palestinian leadership, from Yasser Arafat to even George Habash was in Gaza at some point, even the Fatah leadership, Hamas leadership, Islamic Jihad leadership. The first Intifada started in Gaza. The second Intifada started in Gaza. The Palestinian military resistance actually started in Gaza in the 50s. And in the 70s, the ethnic cleansing of Palestine project to transfer them to Westbank, to Sinai, also ended in Gaza. So you have something, and if we want to take it from a religious or theological view, I think Gaza in the Torah is cursed. Well, so because so this is something add to so many things. That's the ethnically cleansing Palestinians of Gaza should be the goal of Israel, which they have plans for that. But this is very difficult as well.
I mean, yeah, but Israel, they spoke about this, right? And there's an open debate about how to do that. And we've seen over the last 2 months all of these also Israeli extremists who said like flatten it, make it a parking lot, which means like either expel the entire population or if necessary kill the population. And actually, you know, speaking from the viewpoint of extremist solutions, that is the solution, right? Kill everybody, and then the problem is gone. But I believe that even if that happened, the problem wouldn't be gone, right? So can you, I mean, what is Gaza is extremely complicated, right? I mean, even if you manage to push everybody out, they would just be there in the Sinai, right? It's like, how can anyone believe that this is a solution?
If Egypt agreed to, which is impossible, by the way, that means the end of the Egyptian regime.
Yes.
And if we are ending the Egyptian regime now, which regime is coming? So, and you know, you have 120 million Egyptians, and they are one of the most conservative societies in the Muslim majority countries.
And last time they voted, they voted for the Muslim Brotherhood. So, and we
Yes.
know the West doesn't want them back. That's why they have
Exactly.
al-Sisi in place.
So transferring 2 million Palestinians into Sinai, and of course Sinai is not Gaza, is not under siege. Even if you put on, and of course the Egyptian military still sympathize with the Palestinians, and so you will create a new front that's the biggest front and longest front in your history. You cannot deal with it. Like a few months ago, two Egyptian officers killed a few Israeli soldiers on the borders, like just a few months ago in the summer. You cannot handle this. I mean, who is the crazy thinking that sending the Palestinian of Gaza to Sinai will solve the problem? No, you are actually creating a bigger problem, not to Israel, to the whole world. And of course, I don't know, and that's why I don't know if the European bureaucrats in Brussels are happy with that or aware that sending the Palestinians of Gaza to Sinai will solve the problem of Israel, or if the Egyptian army or not army, the Egyptian security will be able to manage them. No, that's Egyptians have no food to eat. The Egyptian regime have no plans to feed the 100 million, and he will not add 2 more millions. That's they have political problem to make a security problem for in that region. But if let's imagine if that happens, that means end of peace accord with Egypt. The Jordanians will also end their peace accord. You are creating a new fronts. You are creating a new fronts in the active front in Lebanon, and this could be internationalization of the conflict, active, like active violence conflict in the world, in the whole world. I have been hearing some reports that the some weapons were found, like for on the side of Jordanian borders also, were like a few weeks ago. So we have the Egyptian borders, it could be active, Jordanian borders could be active. So you cannot. I mean it's something I be in comprehension how those radical think in Tel Aviv.
I talked to Ofer Kassif, the Jewish Knesset member, and he says they don't think logically because they are fanatics. They are absolute fanatics. So their worldview leads to just to lunacy, to absolute lunacy. So when we look at the situation on the ground and what it is, every rational being must come to the understanding that the only way forward is actually reconciliation and not more bombing. But because this is probably going to lay the seeds for the destructions of Israel, because you can't embed yourself in a neighborhood of 150 million people who all hate you to the core, because this is what it's doing right now. But it is actually radicalizing Israeli society in a way that, again, leads back to my previous question. I mean, before half a year ago, Netanyahu was in a horrible situation and Israeli society was fractured, but now Israeli society seems to be pretty galvanized, which makes only the whole thing even much worse.
Okay, from outside we see that they are galvanized, they are united in the society. But now, actually, now that was like weeks ago, like until last week. But now the Israeli society is more actually fracturized at this point, and more radicalized. And that means that's the Jewish liberals who live in Israel have no place there. They cannot live with Israeli Jewish radicals.
Yes,
because the Jewish radicals, they hate them more than they hate the Palestinians, for example.
True. I mean, Ofer Kassif is on the threat of I mean, these kind of
Exactly.
people will be
Ofer,
killed pretty soon.
exactly. Like Ofer is one of their target, for example. And they not only Ofer, you have others as well. So here is the idea is, for Netanyahu, the more the war prolonged, the more he saved himself, and the more the radicals will win internally. But is this sustainable? And the idea is this sustainable? And who is going to defend Israel for a long time? Like yesterday, they killed this Iranian leader in Syria. Will the question now the analysts raise, will the US engage with Iran in this war if they attack Israel, for example? Well, is the US able to, for example, pay for a new regional war?
I mean, the neocons would love to do that. That's what they want. They're hoping for this, and they didn't get it so far because Iran was more cautious than they believed.
Well, Iran is a rational actor. They proved that they are a rational actor in one way or another through this, what happens now, because they have been trying to de-escalate, calling for ceasefire. And that's strangely somehow. But of course, what is happening now is we have a right-wing radical Israeli government led by fascists, Netanyahu, Ben Gvir, Smotrich, and the consequences is not only regional or on Palestinians. It will be globally felt.
Yes. Do you see after this, if once this genocide ends, do you see a way forward to reconciliation? If the ultra radicals stopped, if another force came to power in Israel, do you see the possibility also among Palestinian society to reconcile with the Israelis?
Well, the first we need to see, I mean, to what extent this genocide is. We don't know how many people died.
Yes.
We don't know. So the idea is reconciliation is always there, even in the most brutal conflicts. Reconciliations were there, but as long as the root causes of this of this war, of this grievances, of this genocide continues, there is no way to know. So if to your question, if an Israeli left or more non-radical government came to power and they wanted to reconcile, but based on what? That's the question. So far, no majority of Israelis, they don't want a Palestinian state. So based on what will be the reconciliation based on? The majority of Israelis in the settlements, they want to transfer the Palestinians of the West Bank to Jordan, which surprisingly, I mean, and last week in New York Times, I don't know if it has in New York, there's in the last 10 years, 100,000 Americans came to live in the West Bank. But I was like, why Americans come to live in the West Bank as settlers?
Really? Oh, wow.
Yes, 100,000.
American Jewish settlers in the West
Jewish,
Bank.
yes. They in the last 10 years.
You know, we lack a proper description of the way that Israel and the United States are by now basically one single entity separated into two. I don't understand it anymore, because calling it an alliance doesn't do it justice what this thing is.
Be careful, Pascal. Otherwise, they would call you anti-Semitic.
No. It's like it's just like the state of Israel and the state of on the United States. They are politically melted together so strongly that it surpasses anything else that we have seen. And
I was talking to American friend and a professor, and I was telling him, like, that's $14 billion just in 2 months to Israel in a military assistance. He said, like, he was like he pulled his hair, like, 14 billion, it can end homelessness in the United States for 10 years. Or it can give insurance for the 100 millions, actually, for 10 years.
And that's what is so extremely frustrating, and that's on top of the more than 100 billion that went to Ukraine, right, in order to fuel another war. That's why I like the warmongers, the people who for some reason want bloodshed to get what they want. They have no problem with that kind of spending, but whenever spending is about trying to make sure that your own people are doing fine, there's immediately no money for nothing, right? But there's always money for the weapons. And the thing when it comes to Israel, to me, is it's obviously the entire conflict is intimately linked with the United States. And my worry for Israel, and I would love Israel to do fine, and to Israel to be good, and the Israelis to be fine. I want everybody to be fine. But the thing is that once you take the Americans out of the equations, and as a historian, the only thing I can tell you for sure is that nothing lasts forever. Once you take the Americans out of the equation, well, well. But
We
then
know
again,
this.
the Israelis also have a nuclear bomb, right? That's why, and right now I'm wondering if we're learning that Israel is under control or is not under control of the United States. I actually don't know which one it is.
No, we don't. I mean, if you talk about the bombs, I mean, the culture minister a few weeks ago, he threatened that we need to use WIM.
Yes.
But let me cite, like, a few years ago, Israeli, I don't know if was a military, like, high rank military general. He said the first thing we do if we find Israel existential threat, like, we will use nuclear, and the first continent we will attack is Europe, because we have historical thing. I think if you Google it, you will find this article. So the idea is there. I mean, Israel for me now is a rouge state, that act irrationally, controlled by irrational leadership, and with fear mongering, and rely on military assistance of United States.
This might well go into an absolute diabolical fiasco where like millions of people could die.
Well, it could happen. I mean, you never know. I mean, United States. If we have this game theory of the nuclear powers, they have been behaving very well in the last 50, 75 years after the Hiroshima and Nagasaki. They knew that we have this nuclear power to deter others, but the Israeli always see any act as an existential threat. Like, they have been calling the Palestinian Gaza existential threat. They have been calling Iran existential threat. Now they have been calling Hezbollah as existential threat. So if everything is existential threat around you, then that means something wrong.
Yeah, the thing. Sorry, the thing is the nuclear logic, it enforces some rationality on people. There was this moment when in the 1960s when Switzerland wanted its own nuclear bomb, and they gave that up once they understood that their defense doctrine of using your weapons only inside your country, never using it outside your borders, that would mean that Switzerland would nuke itself if it was attacked, and that would be worse than any kind of attack coming. But something like this must at some point dawn to the Israelis that if you use the nuclear bombs in your own neighborhood, you will die too, right? So this cannot be the solution.
That's what they said. That's what they said, actually. That's what the general this, I remember in an interview, that what he said, that's if it's existential threat that we will die with so many millions. We will not go alone. We will not die alone. We don't want to die alone. And it was this interview, it was like, I mean, a few years ago, I don't know exactly, but if you Google it, you will find it. But this is something that is telling.
I've heard people calling this the Samson option, to take down everybody with you. But this can't be this can't be a solution. I mean, this is just not acceptable under no circumstances. Then again,
yeah, I mean, it's never violence, and is never a solution, and it should never be a solution. The violence. Occupation is never a solution. Colonization is never a solution. autocracy is never a solution. Dictatorship is never a solution. But we have them, and that's the point here is to fight against them. And if we fight against them, there are also consequences and the price for that. But at the end, we people, their instinct, their nature is to resist. I mean, if you held a cat in a cage or a bird in a cage, they will keep trying to leave.
Yeah.
And how about humans?
Which is why I can't understand that anyone can have the idea that caging people in the Gaza Strip in the West Bank, or like shutting 5-6 million people out of their homelands, that this will work. But maybe very last question. A lot of people say that this is a settler colonial enterprise of Israel, and that settler colonialism is the root cause. Do you agree to that, or do you see it differently?
So what is the difference between, if we look at it from academic and research, what is the difference between occupation and settler colonialism? Occupation means that you come, you occupy with the aim to leave. That's simple. Like you occupy something and then you leave. What is the colonial? And the colonial concept is you are there to colonize and to send the native people who live there outside their own place. And that's exactly the game. If we are talking, just I mentioned to you that there is 100,000 Americans, they just moved from one country, from the United States, like 10,000 kilometers away from the West Bank, and they live there. So in principle, the settler colonial concept can be applied to Israel. And there is a strikingly comparable, if we want to put them on this, to compare what is settler colonialism and what is Israeli doing, it could fit 100% on that. This is from academic perspective. But for me, I think it's what is I see there is a combination of so many things. I mean, Israel have characteristics of a settler colonial state, which is with the 300s plus discriminatory laws in especially when it comes to the land in the West Bank and in the settlements in the Gaza Strip, and with the immigration policies. So this gives you the feeling that Israel is a settler colonial, but you have apartheid characteristics in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, and even in Israel and among Jewish themselves.
Yes.
Society, and that's striking there. I mean, the United Nations reports it's there, and then you have the occupation. The concept of occupation have been described by many Israelis, to be honest, academics and politicians, until 10 years ago. I mean, even last week, Ehud Olmert, the former Israeli prime minister, he said, like, we need to end this occupation. I mean, we have a terrorist government. We have a terrorist Jewish, and he said that with a striking face that I am saying this on my people. That's what he said. So it have characteristics of so many things. I mean, and here talking from the research perspective, from a neutral perspective, is Israel settler colonial apartheid, but also occupation, and these characteristics nobody can deny them.
It is a pretty singular thing, isn't it? It's really difficult to find something to liken it to that you could say, like, oh yeah, it's like that. So it's an amalgamation of so many. Exactly.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Well, okay, maybe with these words of analysis, I would like to call it a day. Abdalhadi Alijla, thank you very much for your very valuable time.
Thank you, Pascal. You're welcome.